What do you have?
No, just this in general.
Oh,
I'm recording.
okay. I think you'll have to open the cabinet down below so she can plug in the thumb drive.
I did share the
Yeah.
drive, but
I don't think there's space on the back here, so. That sounded good. Could it be?
I don't know what you do about that, but that's. Yeah, that's the only problem is this is gonna be in the way. I mean, if no one touches it.
Just drag it to the other screen. You can move the.
Oh, yes, perfect.
There we go.
Okay, am I able to get into your slide yet?
it should, I have a copy of the slides on the thumb
Oh,
drive that I
okay,
just
that's
put in as well, so, but you should have permission as well, so.
Yeah, I don't know how to get to your
Oh,
drive.
This is my kid's thumb drive. Hey, cool, yay, look at that. Okay, so I apologize now for any formatting things. I've been like back and forth between Google and this and
Isn't it terrible?
it really is, because I just don't want to pay for like Office, so I just, so I did it,
If you
part-
try Libre, Libre, they have a free version.
really.
It's not got quite as many bells and whistles, but it's pretty darn close.
Hey, that's-
LibreOffice.
LibreOffice, okay, thank you, because I'm really cheap when it comes to that stuff, so I built it in like,
Yeah.
I think I originally built it in PowerPoint, and then I got rid of that computer that I had paid for it, and then I got a whole new like computer, and I didn't want to pay for it, so I opened the PowerPoint in Google,
Yep.
and then I was committed to that, so.
Download it.
Cool. I don't know how to like, yeah,
It's,
Display settings. Yeah.
yeah. Swap. There we go.
hey. Cool, is it a clicker, is that a?
No, you might be able to touch the board.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Oh.
Oh, something popped up.
And zero.
Hi, okay.
Whenever you're ready.
Well, good evening. Hi. My name is Sara Wauer. I have a kid who goes to school here, Frank. So if you run across a punk with orange hair and like, you know, chains and everything, they're very approachable, very nice. So, anyways, my name is Sara Wauer. I am currently an aviation meteorologist. I have been for about, well, since 2016 or 2006, like forgetting what years it is. So I've had a very non-traditional path to becoming a meteorologist. How many of you guys are meteorology majors? Rock on! Very cool. Well, I, like I said, did not go that route. I did not go the college route. I'll show you some of my credentials and whatever, like in a moment, but so when you get out in the field and you interact with people, you're gonna interact with a lot of people from different experience levels. You're gonna be, you know, college graduates to old people to military backgrounds to like a lot of it. So meteorology is a really interesting field to get into because you will usually meet quite a diverse group of people depending on, you know, where you're going and what you're doing. So so my specialty is in aviation meteorology. Do any of you guys have any knowledge of how weather impacts aircraft or anything? Cool, well, I will dabble into all of that and I will get into it as little or much as you guys want me to. If you give me web access, I will throw up some websites and click around and show you some stuff or whatever. Yeah, so let's like proceed. So this is really quick. That was me at Dyess Air Force Base in West Texas, in my simulated, well, my chem gear, because we were having an exercise, doing what weather people do, point at radars, you know. So this is me in Western Afghanistan at a base called Shindan. about 60 miles away from the Iranian border. That was when I was working as a civilian, and then this is me deployed to northern Iraq in the Air Force in 2011, and me with the weather center that we had for the airfield. So, yay. All right, so my experience, like I said, over 16 years of aviation meteorology experience. I have spent 8 years total of my life living, working in deployed war zones, so a little different. Basically between Iraq and Afghanistan, supporting all these missions and whatnot. Basically I forecast for the US Air Force, US Army, NATO operations, State Department, other government agencies, and then now my new role as of a little over a year ago is I'm working in corporate aviation. So kind of made a little bit of a transition there. So basically I have forecasts for dozens of military installations across, hi, welcome. I forecast for dozens of military installations across mostly the northeastern United States, as well as written aviation use tasks for all 7 continents now. So that was pretty exciting when I hit that little milestone. I have forecasts for airframes like B-1s, F-16s, C-130s, different UAVs, helicopters, and then any kind of like private jet you can kind of think of. Yeah. So, and then my main educational background is I earned my what we call CCAF, but Community College of the Air Force Associate of Arts in Weather Technology, and I was a distinguished graduate from the initial weather school, and then I've attended combat weather operations school and then radar management school through the US Air Force as well. So a lot of different things that I've kind of gone through, and here I am. So we'll kind of like get into what I do. These are some of the locations, just in case you don't know your geography of the Middle East off the top of your head, which a lot of people don't. It's fine. I will say the more you do weather, the better your geography will get. By far, like especially aviation meteorology, because I can get a brief that they're flying from Singapore to Japan, like Tokyo, and then another brief where they're flying from Mumbai to London and like going 2 different directions, and I have to be able to know where to tell them different, hazards are en route. But so these are the places that I actually lived and worked in the Middle East, in Iraq, at Balad and Kirkuk, and then this is the last place I was. I just left there June of 2021, right before everything fell apart. So the base that I was at was taken over by Taliban 6 weeks after I left. So yep,
Just missed.
barely. So yeah, those are the places I have been. Let's see. All right. So what does an aviation meteorologist do? I will tell you that every single place, if you work in aviation meteorology, it's gonna be your #1 reason for aviation meteorology is ensuring personnel and resource protection, depending on the scope of your mission. There are different types of aviation meteorology. I've kind of done most of it. The big ones, I used to work at an airfield and I used to take observations and I would transmit the METARs for the entire world to see. I would write the actual terminal aerodrome forecast for the airfields to transmit for the pilots to use flying in and out. So that's one aspect of aviation meteorology. There's the aspect I'm doing now, which is wonderful. I work remote from my basement and I put together weather briefing, flight plan packages and forecast all the en route hazards and basically departure and arrival forecasts and all of that from my basement. So I went from having to work 8,000 miles from home to in my home, and it's so but that's the #1 thing is ensuring that people and resources are safe. That's the #1 priority almost of any like operational like weather is you're ensuring safety basically. So the things that I mainly do provide an overview of flight hazards and conditions along the flight route. I'll analyze the weather data to produce mission and trip tailored forecasts. So not only do we provide like a wider scope of what the weather's going on along their route and near their route, but also tailor it to exactly where they're landing and taking off from and all of that. We provide on-the-spot briefings. We have a phone that it'll ring, and it can be a pilot calling. Usually they're flying out of Teterboro to like Paris or something, and they just want a quick brief of the weather. Yeah, and then you kind of do that. You just give them an overview of everything that's going on. Like I said, one aspect is observing, reporting the weather observations for the airfields, which is important for model data. It's important for verifying that models are doing well. It's important for knowing that a forecast is actually accurate, because if you see the forecast and you see the METAR and they don't line up, you know that that's a bad forecast and you need to dig a little deeper and take a look at things. So relay weather conditions to pilots via radio. There's most military bases, there's something called a PMSV radio, which is pilot to metro, which is basically a radio frequency that pilots in the area can call down directly and find out any weather conditions that they need. So that's kind of cool. And then maintaining climatological records, which is basically just part of being a part of any observation station. And then providing local training for ATC personnel, air traffic control personnel and pilots, so that they know what local effects are going on, that they know what the visibilities are, like they have to be able to tell when things, I'll show you it here in a moment, reach certain thresholds, because it impacts the operations tempos of the airports. So very important role. Me again. And that's actually, as they call it, the red carpet that the distinguished visitors would show up to at Dice Air Force Base. So it's a brick pad on the tarmac. So okay, so I'm gonna take a sip. I'm gonna be rude.
How could you?
How dare I? All right, do any of you know anything about METARs and TAPs?
I had to do it for Dr. Finch's class while I was home, and it was still my favorite segment of that class.
Well, I will say, if you get involved in aviation meteorology, you need to be able to live, breathe, and read this backwards, forward in your sleep. And it will come, like, it's one of those things, you look at it constantly. There are certain things, I like to say, look, there are certain things that you learn that you're like, okay, I learned that, cool, I'm not necessarily gonna. This is important, and this is honestly important even outside of just aviation meteorology, because even as, we'll say, a broadcast meteorologist, how do you think that they know what, like, some of the weather conditions are currently around the area? Because they're tapping into the airport sensors that are putting out this information. They're able to, like, I would hope, read it and know what the conditions are, so that they can report it accurately according to what the airport is actually reporting. So TAF METAR code is the just lifeblood of aviation meteorology. It's basically all these different codes. I won't, unless you guys really want me to like get into like constructing like all of this, I kind of pulled up someplace today that they had weather going on. So you can kind of see, like, just basically it's broken down into the airport ICAO identifier. And you have your Zulu time, your date and your time of transmit. Then it gives you your winds and your visibility 2 miles with light rain and mist. And then overcast ceiling above ground level, 500 feet with a temperature of 10, dew point of 9, altimeter setting of 2993. Then a whole bunch of other stuff that comes out every 3 to 6 hours. Things like, well, sea level pressure is not, but you have 6 hour and 3 hour precip group, temperatures, and then pressure tendencies. So a lot of information is actually in the METARs, and it's kind of nice once you know how to read it, because it is really compact and everything. So very, very important. And then along with the METAR for the observation, there's also the TAF, which is also very similar. Do you know, let's see. Can you read this line right here?
I did take it like a year and a half ago.
No worries. This basically just means that after the 7th at 02 Zulu, the winds are going to be basically northeasterly, 050, 06 knots. looking at 3 miles visibility with moderate rain, mist, and overcast ceiling at 400. And the important thing of specifying a ceiling, do you guys know? No. Ceiling is so when you're taking an observation and or assessing like for the purposes of a tap, you're breaking the sky up into 8 octets. And that's where you get your clear, few, scattered, broken, overcast. Have you heard those terms? Okay, so that's basically like you have 0 for clear, 1 to 2 eighths for few, 2 to 4 eighths for scattered, 4 to 7 eighths for broken, and then 8 eighths for overcast. So once you hit broken, it's called a ceiling, which means that over half of the aerodrome is covered, obscured from the ceiling of the sky. So that's important for aircraft to know because, you know, whether or not they're able to have line of sight and from what height they're able to. So this overcast at 400 feet is very, very low for aircraft to try to fly in and out. Like it's very, very difficult. So yeah, anytime you see like anything that says broken, BKN, overcast, that's going to impact flying operations if the clouds are low enough. So yeah, these are like things that are just like, you can pick this information out and then apply it to the trip that you're doing in order to provide the most safe and accurate weather conditions that you can.
One other application is whether you're VFR, IFR.
As the next slide.
Sorry.
Might be the next slide. So.
She's presenting.
Hey, no, this makes me feel good because like I said, non-traditional path, so like when I saw there was an adult in the room, that's why I was like, oh, well, no, but like. So it just makes me feel good. So FAA categories are very, very important when it comes to a lot of aspects. It's very kind of deep. There's certain airports that are rated for certain either IFR, LIFR. There's certain airports that don't have an air traffic control on hand, so they're called VFR. So you can only fly when you can see more than 3 miles and the cloud ceiling, not necessarily just clouds, but the cloud ceiling has to be at least 3,000 feet. Anything above that is VFR, and pilots can fly, so they can file for VFR, there's a lot of different things that come into play with that. It's good flying weather, basically. And VFR is like in between. It's like questionable, but it's still technically okay. So when you get into this right here, the IFR, when you have ceiling below 5,000 or 500 feet, which we saw at Teterboro, it was at 400 feet, so we're IFR there. The visibility, however, was 3 miles, which is still okay, but it's the worst of the two between visibility and ceilings. So we look at the ceilings because it was worse, we are IFR, so there's going to be different rules that are in effect at the airport. There's going to be different airplanes that are able to fly in, different pilots with their ratings who are able to fly in. So this chart really does dictate a lot when it comes to like weather and flying and everything. So, and then anytime you see a chart, we'll line up with these colors here. So if you see green, green is good. Blue is red and fuchsia, bad.
What percentage of cloud cover do you need for the ceiling factor to actually matter?
Technically, the answer is 5/8, just over half. So anything 5/8 and above, if it's below 500 feet, will matter. Some airports have different, but MVFR is kind of an in-between category, so that's why I'm but for the most part, anything if it's broken at broken 4 or 5/8 at 5,000 feet, nothing impacted, yeah. So should be good. I just wouldn't fly through those clouds or in those clouds if I was a pilot, because that can be unpleasant. So types of aviation hazards. Big one is thunderstorms, obviously. A lot of the reason with thunderstorms is going to be because of the sheer turbulence, severe turbulence to extreme turbulence, hail, and within a little story that I'll tell you guys maybe later. We had a lieutenant colonel and no, I'm sorry, he was a full-bird colonel in the Air Force, and he approved flying his own mission, and he flew into a thunderstorm and incurred hail damage and tried to blame weather. Guess whose fault it was not? Weather. So hail's a big one because it'll put holes through planes. I've seen it. It's bananas. Icing is going to impact the aerodynamics of the aircraft plus add extra weight. So it's going to be more difficult for it to make. Most of the time, icing is going to be a problem depending on the flight levels for takeoff and descent, because they're going in and out of the clouds. And at a certain level, you kind of get a little too cold for there to be icing. So like most aircraft fly at like 40,000 feet. So they're not going to encounter like icing at that level. But if it's a low level flight that's going like, 14,000 feet through some clouds, and it's those conditions are correct for it within certain, parameters of like dew point depressions and all of that, it'll accrete, ice will accrete on the wings and the structure of the aircraft, and problematic. And it can also affect the electronics and everything, that just the sensors. It's not great when it happens. So we look out for icing. Turbulence is a huge one. It seems to be getting more and more interesting. I will say, just in my current job that I started in February of last year, I've done close to 2,000 weather briefs, and I have only not put turbulence in, I think, 3.
Wow.
Of some level or intensity, even occasional turbulence, I think 3. And they were all just like 5,000 foot flights from, 10-minute flights from here to there. Like,
Wow.
yeah, it's huge. It's a big impact. I mean, if you've ever been on a flight that you've, been bounced around, it's pretty bad, and it can cause, in some cases, injury and death. So, and structural issues with the aircraft. And a lot of our flights cross oceans. So you do not want to hit any large patches of turbulence, crossing across the northern Atlantic. And so it's important to know the levels and to brief the pilot to let them know. Because I will say, like, this is a quick thing with weather people, like a lot of aviation meteorology, some of it is making some decisions. Like part of it, I used to issue watches, warnings, and advisories for the Air Force bases that I was at. I had to make decisions in that case. Like you had to pull the trigger on like one time or another tornado warnings and severe thunderstorm warnings for your base, and you're just like, this is bananas. Like, a lot of times though, the interesting aspect of weather is that you're providing data in a format that people can understand from a different, say, industry. So for me, I have my experiences in weather. My experience is like knowing how to forecast the weather. So, but I have to know how to communicate that to a pilot who also knows weather, obviously, but they know it in a different way. They know it from different aspects and whatnot. So a lot of it is providing information to these people to make decisions. We were told in the Air Force, cheesiest thing ever, but it sticks with me, that we were the domino pushers. So we weren't the last domino necessarily in the line, but we definitely were the ones that were at the beginning pushing that first domino to get things going. We issued something, and a lot of people have to like go hangar aircraft, and they have to close base pools. They have to like close, all these different aspects of living on this base that go into effect when we push the button on putting out a warning. So it's kind of a little bit cool. One that a lot of people don't think about, volcanic ash is a huge problem if an aircraft flies through it. It will volcanic ash for the most part, it's like silica dioxide, which is sand, which when you melt sand at high temperatures, it turns to glass. So yeah, you do not want to fly an aircraft through volcanic ash. It will it will do terrible things to an aircraft, it will wreck jet engines. I mean, technically, I guess if it's a prop flight, you know, more power to them, that's fine. Jet engines are the ones that burn hot, so that's gonna be a problem. So there are actually volcanologists across the world who are all part of kind of networks similar to the National Weather Service has in aviation weather and all of that. For the volcanic ash observatories, basically, and they issue advisories for aviation purposes that we actually include in our briefs to make sure that pilots know what's going on, so. Okay, so a couple of the products that I'll use on a regular basis. One of the things that's kind of cool, and I'll say, like, you know, seeking degrees and whatnot, you know, you have the options to work at places like the Aviation Weather Center. One of my coworkers currently actually worked at the Aviation Weather Center and now is working with me at Universal. The company I work for is called Universal Aviation and Weather. What we do is we provide weather briefings, flight plans, all sorts of flight following, like all of these services for business aviation services, basically charter flights or companies that own their own aircrafts, like they come to us and we provide them with all of their services. We also coordinate a lot of their like dining services or fuel services and stuff like that. So we were into the aviation service industry, but it started with the weather, and that's the heart of what we do. I will say, but in the past year, I have forecast at least for 5 of the 10 Fortune 500 top richest people in the world, multiple Fortune 500 companies. I walked out of Starbucks the other day and I was like, Starbucks, and then I was like Buffalo Wild Wings and AutoZone and Walmart, and I was like, all of these places you don't realize they have corporate jets because they have business that they have to attend to all over the world, and so they have to get their weather from somewhere, and it's just cost effective for them to have a place that they can go to for all of these services.
This is on the last slide. Do you have to worry about solar and magnetic storms? 'Cause
Yes, actually, that is one thing that we will include in our briefings. Whenever we'll include like an overview. There's one that's issued like weekly. But when there are geomagnetic storms, we will include like the enhanced advisories and everything that are issued because it will impact their communications. Absolutely, yeah. Let's see, okay, so AirMets and SIGMETs are wonderful. And if you see going the route of working somewhere here like this, I say in advance, thank you, because as an end user, like I appreciate absolutely having AirMets and SIGMETs. So SIGMETs are issued for things like thunderstorms and severe turbulence and severe icing and volcanic ash and tornadic activity, but that's kind of more in the thunderstorm, but I think they do actually have a specific one. Low level wind shear, which the example that I pulled up is one that's a SIGMET. Oh, no, this one was a convective SIGMET. So convective SIGMET is basically for any thunderstorm activity. So it'll kind of outline the area that they're either seeing or anticipating thunderstorms. And it'll give you a little area that you kind of have to learn how to read, but it basically is kind of like airport to airport to airport to airport. Like it's squares similar to what the National Weather Service uses, but it uses airspaces and airports. So, but this one is basically indicating that there's an area of embedded thunderstorms moving from the west 260 at 20 knots with tops of 350. Tops are important because if you're flying at 45,000 feet and you have a thunderstorm at 35,000 feet, they will fly over it. They're fine with that, like, at least my people are, like, so, knowing the tops, and we use these things, but at the same time, I don't want to give the impression that I work hard. I don't want to give the impression that I literally just use all of this stuff. Like I will actually go into this area on certain products and I'll actually look up the QT and see where the tropopause is, because that's probably where the max stops are going to be. So I'll verify the information that they're seeing and do my own double check with my information.
Just kind of a reference.
Exactly. It's kind of like, oh, I'm thinking thunderstorms. Oh, there's a SIGMET there for thunderstorms. Okay, cool. They're saying 35. Well, let me look at that satellite, because I can see where the tops of on the IR satellite, which I'll show you in a minute, are whatever temperature. And then I can look at my SKU-T and see what temperature that coincides with at what height. That's another way to like look at where the tops are. I can look at the SKU-T, see where the tropopause is, like, you know, all these different methods to kind of verify what the information is. And that way you can give them more accurate information, because if they have 35, but they're moving into like, say, maybe an area of warmer water. So maybe there's chances for more development and there's a little bit higher like tropopause. Maybe the hot tops are gonna be 38. Well, if my flight's at 40,000, there's a big difference for them between 35,000 and 38,000. So little things like that, you know, can try to do to just ensure a little bit more safe environment. And then a little bit less a degree of SIGMETs or air mets. These are more for like your moderate turbulence, your moderate icing, surface winds that are strong, low level wind shear, a lot of different things that like kind of give you a heads up that these aren't great conditions, but they're not severe conditions. So. All right, another thing that we look at to verify the information that you saw before called PIREPs. So PIREPs are reported from pilots and they're routed through most of the time weather centers or whatnot. So basically like this pilot right here, he's flying, let's see, what is this, 30 miles to the southwest of KGBE at 2110Z at a flight level of 39,000 feet. It's a Boeing 738, experienced light to moderate constant turbulence. So yeah, it's a quick little code. This one right here is actually a severe PIREP. So it has a little bit of a different UUA versus UA. And this one actually talks about the low level wind shear as it's going into Southern California. So little way to verify information. And also sometimes we get PIREPs and maybe we weren't thinking low level wind shear. And then all of a sudden we see a PIREP and we're like, oh, well, there is in fact low level wind shear. So let us update things and make adjustments. So live data is wonderful. I love live data. Anytime I look at any model data that I'm using to write a forecast, I look at the observations first. I look at what time it is now on whatever I'm looking at. I look at the observations because I want to make sure that things are close. Because if I'm looking at something and it's not showing that there's like low level ceilings in, well, the model's not like handling the situation well. So why am I going to necessarily look at that 12 hours from now? Like I might have to actually like dig a little deeper into some different things, use some of the knowledge I know of like patterns and how, you know, different things are impacted and whatnot. So there's a lot more than just reading a meteogram, we'll just say. All right, so METSAT. So satellite is wonderful. And I don't know how much you guys have dove into satellite. I don't have water vapor up here, I apologize. I didn't have it on Windy. By the way, if you want a really cool website, I'm not plugging it because I don't have any stock in it or anything, but windy.com is wonderful. Windy is, I love it. I actually pay for the subscription for it because it's got so much information. But okay, I'm not trying to sell it, 'cause like I said, I don't.
What's that check hanging out of you?
Exactly. I'm like, I have to pay for it just like everyone else. So here we have two different satellite imagery. We have infrared and we have visible. So visible uses light basically, and you see it visible. Infrared uses thermal temperatures. So it's an image of projecting what the temperature values are, whatnot, in the atmosphere. And the cool thing is, the reason I put these two together is because there's a lot that you can kind of tell. When you're looking at visible, it's really nice because it's a beautiful, crisp, clear image. You can see like a lot of like awesome features. You can see like a little bit of banding through here, so maybe a little bit of turbulence. See all of this up here. If you loop it, you'll notice it doesn't move. And oh, no. Okay, you'll notice it doesn't move. It's because it's snow. And you can't necessarily tell that from the live image. So that's the other thing that I'll say. Live data and loop your images. live data and loop your images are the best things that I can tell you guys, because it'll tell you a lot. So this one is awesome because you can see like a lot of the details in the clouds. You can see like, you know, a lot of the maybe the heights and whatnot, like where some of the, and then you come over here and then you can see where the colors are, and then you know that that's where the higher clouds are. That's where like the more, like probably more indicative, or where the weather is actually happening is along this frontal area and everything. And you can like, and I love that. I just love the fact that you can use both of these. And this is wonderful because you can't use this at night because there's no sunlight. And that's a bummer. I hate that. But visible is also wonderful for things like fog banks, because things at the surface are gonna be warm. IR is probably not gonna pick up on it as well because it's at the surface, it's probably gonna be pretty close to like the surface temperature. So it's just gonna look like a blob. Whereas on visible, you're gonna see bright white. So you're gonna know that there's like a difference between the two, and you're gonna like investigate into like, okay, what's that? It could be cloud, it could be fog, you don't know, but you know that there's something there that you may not have seen on here, but saw on here, so. Oh. Oh, well, those pictures didn't wanna, oh, apparently I did fancy stuff on this slide. So, one of the IR imaging curves that we used a lot in the Middle East, which is kind of, I wanted to put it on here because it was kind of cool, is a dust imagery, which basically all of this pink right here is dust. These are like the good old small winds that happen across Iraq. And this is the source region, and it starts here, and you can see where the wind flow is. Like that's a massive dust storm. That was not pleasant. So it's gonna stay. I think I screenshot this because I would have been right in here.
Oh.
So, and this green here is cloud. So just imagine like that this is traveling and that this green is just obscuring it because it's below it, because that's a little bit of
So
cloud
you would
above.
have seen it otherwise.
So I sent that, I think, to my station manager at the time going, look at this. And then this is the last base I was at in northern Afghanistan, right in here. There was a mountain range right here. So we actually had a little bit of a dust storm come through. It wasn't too bad, but if you see this light pink, this is the mountain ridge. So it's basically the wind flow, it's like a bowl. And it just basically like made it go like this around the base, just to the south, a dust bowl, correct. So, but you're at the mercy of no clouds. That's the one big thing with like this imagery. If you have any clouds, it's not gonna work, because you're not gonna see what's at the surface, which there were clouds over the mountains that day, so, yeah. Just thought that was a kind of a cool shot. Okay, then radar, I just threw up the windy radar to show like, you know, what it was doing with the everything else, and we saw all of the like enhanced tops and you know, everything on the viz, and now you get to see the radar and you can see where that lines up, and then you're, you know, pretty well convinced at that point in time about some weather. I'm not gonna get too much into radar because that's a whole other like beast of its own, and I love radar, but I didn't get to use it for years because we didn't have radar overseas. We didn't have radar anywhere that I was overseas. Which really sucked because I was really good at it when I was in the Air Force, and I had to use it like operationally at the station. Like it was so much fun. It was a blast. And then I went overseas for years and didn't get to use it at all. So I feel like all of my skills went the way, and we used to have one of the old OPOPs that actually dialed directly into the radar site. So we got the images and the raw data and all of that, and it was awesome. And now I don't have that. And I'm like, anyways. So let's see. This is an example of one of the volcanic ash advisories. This is for Fuego down in Guatemala. So this is just basically a bunch of airspace information, but the most key information is showing like its surface up to 16,000 feet. And that's going to be MSL. I won't get into MSL versus AGL, but just know that that is important when it comes to aviation meteorology, because stations are at different elevations. Yeah, So, we just scan through this to see and notify them like, okay, you know, it's at whatever level. And then this is a little map that just kind of shows over the next few hours what they're expecting the ash to do based on the wind flow in the atmosphere.
I like that the volcano emoji thing has like fire in there.
Exactly. I think it's like that on the stigmats too, actually, hang on. It's hard to, oh yeah, it's hard to see, but the little symbol like on some of them are just like that, so. The cat, that is cute. Okay, so another thing that airplanes don't wanna fly through unless you're a hurricane hunter C-130. You don't wanna fly through tropical weather. I've had to route some. Okay, really quick, flight planners are supposed to have basic knowledge of weather. And we give them like a basic, like, here's where the bad spots are. I have had flight plans going right through some typhoons and like, I'm like, hey, can you not do that, maybe? So, yeah, like, this is an example, we basically got the National Hurricane Center and the Joint Typhoon Warning Center are the two main hubs for everything tropical related. National Hurricane Center is gonna do your central, eastern, and your Atlantic. Central, Eastern, Pacific, and the Atlantic, and then Joint Typhoon Warning Center is gonna have the rest of the Pacific and the Indian Ocean. So right now, they've got a little area off Madagascar that they're keeping an eye on, but not too much else, because it is illegal for hurricanes to occur right now, so. Sorry, it's one of my silly weather jokes. I actually made a pilot laugh a couple weeks ago with that one, so. All right, so that's a lot about aviation meteorology. Now, like, I'm not a very structured person, having been in the military. So I more like to just kind of show pictures and tell little stories or whatever. And if you guys have questions, I'm just gonna like show you some random stuff and like my time overseas and like my weird environment. This is in Iraq. These are Iraqi military officers climbing a pole to install their internet.
Oh, I didn't even see the person at
Yeah.
first on the pole.
I was scared that day that he was, I know him.
Oh.
I thought he was gonna die. But it was okay, he was okay, they got their internet working, however, this was where our office used to be. And then I'm actually taking the picture from the air traffic control tower in Balad, so we moved offices. It was a long 5 flights of stairs to climb up.
I bet.
This is me the day that I got to leave Iraq after 7.5 months there. Dealing with a lot of, yeah, I will just say it was 2011 Iraq was a great time to be there. So I was really happy to leave, but that was their traffic control tower that I worked in. That was our weather office right there. We actually had a window, which was wonderful. Not all weather places do, so I will say it was very,
Is
very.
that why our lab has no windows?
It's not my fault.
It is,
Lab didn't have windows either.
no,
I think you're just preparing us for the future, but I mean, right?
It is definitely a running joke.
Freak out.
It's definitely a running joke that like either weather people don't have windows or whether people do have windows and don't use them. So this is the room that I lived in Balad, Iraq. The rest and everything, yeah.
That's
yeah.
not a room, that's a train car.
That's a room. It's metal, so it got really hot. That was my air conditioner. And then to go to the bathroom. Walk all the way down there.
Just like the doors.
Yep.
You gotta walk to go to the bathroom.
Now, what really was horrible was when it was 124 degrees and I was working overnight. And I had to go outside at 2 o'clock in the afternoon in the heat with my robe over me to not blind myself to get to that bathroom.
Oh my god, cause the walls are white. Burn your eyes.
Everything is bright, everything is so bright. And then this is our airfield operations center. Sounds so fancy, but it is a plywood building in the Helmand province of Afghanistan. But this is the heart of the airfield right here. We were, the weather station was on the other side of this wall. And then we had the aircraft marshalers in here. We had the airfield operations people who actually maintained the runway, maintained all of the NOTAMs and the everything like dealing with the actual airspace. We had our concrete people in here who would do patch jobs, because when you're in a war zone, you gotta have people to do patch jobs on runways. So, and then we have our little weather sensor right there on the top, at our airport firefighting crew back here. And then our dorms were back over here on the far side of that. And so that was about a quarter of a mile, and that was where I lived and worked for here 3 years. Yeah, that was awesome.
So did you leave because of that mass callback that happened, or was it your own choice, or what?
Oh, like in
If
2021,
you're allowed to say.
the war ended, basically, I mean. It
Ended
was,
is a pretty light term.
yeah, that's why I choose my words. It was a weird time, and I'll just say that I'm not necessarily of the political persuasion of a lot of people that I worked with out there. So it was a really challenging time being out there, and I got stuck there in Mazar-e Sharif, northern Afghanistan, for a year and a half straight. Normally, when I work overseas, I would work for 6 months, come home for 3 weeks, have a vacation with my family, and then go back, work for 6 months, whatever. I got stuck for a year and a half because of COVID and the lack of flights and the lack of services and the lack of everything. So from December 29th of 2019, yes, like 3 months before COVID, until strangely enough, June 6th of 2021, which is D-Day, if any of you, yeah. Which is, it's extra ironic because guess which country's military ran the base at Mazar-e Sharif, and I worked for primarily?
Britain? France.
Germany!
Oh,
The Luftwaffe! Right there! Yeah, like it was a NATO base, so each NATO base, there were a couple that were run by the Italians, one up with the Germans, that was their biggest base. So I worked for NATO, working for the Germans, and on D-Day, we got sent out. Which I just found ironic. So yeah, the war came to a close, abruptly.
it was abrupt.
I'm just gonna say, as somebody that was over there, people can say what they want, it was going to end badly no matter what.
Yes.
No matter how withdrawal occurred, it was going to be bad. But having lived there, it was very bad. Anyway, so basically the plan was to hand the base back over to the Afghan military. So the Germans did a transition period of 2 weeks where they provided the services after we left. And then the Afghan military took over for about 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks later, or a week later, or whatever, the Taliban took over Mazar-e Sharif. It was, yeah, it was really quick after I left, and that was a weird feeling. So kind of interesting, you know? Okay, so this is a sunrise.
Oh, sunrise.
Yeah, this is Balad, Iraq. So this is north of Baghdad. The Tigris River actually flows like right over there, like about 2 or 3 miles, thus prone to fog. Of all places, Iraq, prone to fog. So I think we had gotten some rain. I'm looking around, I'm seeing a little bit of puddles or whatever. So, we had extra moisture and everything. And this was the morning. So this is like, 200 feet up on the air traffic control tower, 150 feet up, I think it was, on the air traffic control tower, which I was in, by the way, when an earthquake hit in Iran and the entire tower split.
Whoa.
And that was terrifying. Okay, anyways, excuse me. So this, as you can see, you can't see anything, like at all. Like you can maybe make out a couple of trees, whatnot, but like you can't see anything. And then like this, yeah, maybe these were 2 different days. It's definitely sunrise. I think that's what I did, is I didn't have a picture afterwards, cause I was actually working. You know, so I think the next day I went up and took a picture of like the sunrise, I thought about it, cause I'm like, the sun is up higher. So therefore, either the fog started after sunrise, which isn't normal. Or these are different days, because that's a higher sun angle, sorry.
Are you
I'm like-
allowed to take photos of the military base? Like that? Okay.
No classified documents in it, so.
Correct, I don't have anything classified. I also don't have a lot of pictures. So, yeah, I have some interesting pictures, actually, some of the videos I have on here. That if they don't work, I have them on the thumb drive itself. I was given a hard drive by the German military that was a backup of like all of our weather stuff at Mazar-e Sharif. And then when we were leaving, I was like, what do you want me to do with it? I'm like, you can take it with you. I'm like,
Just in case.
I go, okay, like there's nothing unclassified on it, so I was like, okay. I was digging through it and I found videos and pictures of a C-17 aircraft that took off through a flooded runway and incurred damage and still took off.
That's impressive.
I was gonna show you that video here in a little bit, but this was the flood. For reference, when I show you guys the video, this is the flood that they took off through. On the runway.
I'd like to see that.
Yeah. C-17s are a beast. So this is some flooding in Balad, this is the same air traffic control tower, and you can see. All of this was pretty well covered with rain, it was awful. That was the living area covered in rain, it was disastrous. So this is a cool thing that would happen, primarily in like the late spring and then October timeframe at Mazar-e Sharif. This is the mountain ridge that I was talking about, that's just to the south of the airport itself. So what would happen is during the day, you would get cumulus that would form up over the mountains. And every day it would be like varying levels of, you know, how much they would grow, how much uplift they would get. So, you know, we have like a little bit of the cumulus either starting to form, or it's just one of those days that didn't get a lot of them. This day, things were starting to develop. And then develop further, and then as they started to develop. And you can even see like the, you know, the rain shaft underneath it over the mountains. And these mountains were right at 3 miles away, so if we couldn't see these mountains, we were considered below VFR, so we would be considered IFR. And then it would come down off of the mountains, and then it would start to do one of two things, rain or kick up dust. Because that's one of the wonderful things about working in a desert area, is that sometimes it doesn't rain, sometimes it just dusts. Yeah, it's pretty unpleasant, so yeah, it's kind of interesting every day to be able to watch the thunderstorm development and kind of have your little like in-house bets on whether or not things were gonna develop or not, and you know, all that fun stuff, so. This is hail that actually occurred, this is a friend of mine that his photos, this was in Kandahar. And they got a lot of hail, and for years afterwards in Afghanistan, you come across vehicles that got moved around from base to base that would have hail damage from the storm. It was kind of interesting. That was a day looking out my window at work, and that's the runway. Oh, no.
What's the runway?
It's funny that I can get it to do it when I don't want it to. And then when I work for it. So I think there was a thunderstorm that had collapsed just to the north of us in Uzbekistan. And it kicked out an outflow boundary from the north. And this was the leading edge of the outflow boundary. And when you don't have radar and you have satellite that, if you're lucky, updates every half hour, maybe every 45 minutes. And Termez has an observation and you have an observation, there's nothing else in between. Yeah, you get days like this, wonderful. And so that's all just dust coming in. That's a little UAV, unmanned aerial vehicle. That's their launching pad. I think I have some videos of that, I think. Okay, so this was a day at Dwyer and Helmand Province, which is in the middle of the desert, middle of the desert. This was about 4 miles out, and this was a day the thunderstorm collapsed to the north, and it kicked out an outflow boundary. And you can kind of just barely, if you look, see a different color right in there.
Barely.
Yeah. And then, as it gets a little closer,
Barely see.
you realize. And then you're like, oh, that's a big wall of dust.
Every action is right there after explosion.
Yeah, exactly. And then, yeah.
Mission Impossible.
And then by this time I got busy and I couldn't take any more pictures. That's the bad thing about working at a weather station, that when the weather gets fun, you get busy, and so you know, have to actually do more work. This is one of those instances like I was talking about with the dust coming around the bowl. This is that ridge line. This is the airfield for Mazar-e Sharif. And you can see like, whoa! Come back. Nope. Okay. So you can kind of see like it looks a little obscured, like it looks a little hazy through here.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you can see like a ridge line. And then over here you can't see it.
Okay.
Like that was and it's like sitting just basically right at the end of the runway. I think I was probably carrying like 2.5 miles at that point. And then it just continued along the ridge line. And I think that was about the extent of what we got that day. So sometimes you get lucky. That was a really bad day.
Ew.
That was a really bad day. It was dusty and it was 124 degrees.
How do you survive that?
I don't know.
Adapt.
I don't know. Sometimes I look back and I think it was just a big fever dream that I didn't actually do any of this. Like, I don't know. Like, it's hot. It is so hot. It's unreal. But I will say anything over 110, honestly, didn't really feel much different. So if that's,
It's always.
I'm not sure that's a good thing.
yeah, that's the sun.
Sure.
Just in case you were wondering, it's not the moon. It's like the full blown,
I
like
can actually stare at
the sun. Yeah. Dust storms are just awful. This was a winter storm that we had in northern Afghanistan.
Yes, no, in Afghanistan?
Northern Afghanistan, we absolutely had snow. This was about 4 inches of snow that we got one time. This is our little like headquarters building. This was the airport firefighter. Like this was our little, you can see where this was like a netting tent thing and the snow was like dropping it, because this right here, it's about that high. So you had to like actually duck in to go in. So yeah, that was pretty fun. But yeah, it melted a couple of days later, but it was a full blown little snowstorm. And then I think it was about a week later, we had fog set in for a week straight.
Oh.
It did not lift. Like we were IFR for a week straight, which helicopters, depending on their mission, I don't know, Germans are, they're another breed sometimes, so, yeah.
There's
So-
no joke.
Exactly. So the other thing about this with being fog is you can see all the snow on the ground. It was also like about 20 degrees outside. So after a week, I took these pictures
Whoa.
from all of the hoarfrost that deposited on everything, and I thought those were really cool pictures. Let's see. Okay, so this was something that, like, as weather people, I figured could maybe show you as interesting. So we know that the height of this little, these are mountains. This is like the tarmac area of the airport. These are the mountains that are famously were behind Mazar-e Sharif. You can see where the cloud deck is on it, like right across here. And you can see that it's all ice and it's all snow. It's all white, except for when you get to here. And this is a mountain that's a little bit closer, a little hill that they actually used as a shooting range. It was the main shooting range that the helicopters flew over. But if you can tell, it's a little bit lower than right here. This is about 800 feet tall, and that's where the freezing level was. So you could actually see like where the freezing level was, like based on, yeah. Just thought that was interesting. Rainbows, Mazar-e Sharif, and the bathroom at Balad, like. And then I'll show you guys the videos really quick if you would like. Oh, no, I'm not gonna keep those. Yeah, no. I'm good. All right. So let's see. Okay, I promised you the C5. I mean, this is the coolest video, so I'm starting with the coolest. Oh, what are you doing? Oh, I get to watch it. Hold on. What are you doing? Okay. Don't worry, you haven't missed much. This is the German Satco talking. He's the senior air traffic controller. Oh. So. This actually happened in like 2016, I believe. It was right before I got there, so I inherited this.
This mess.
Every single thing that we did from this point after was followed with the question, will there be flooding? It was like such a math. Because this is the United States Air Force right here. But still go.
Oh my
Woo!
God. So wait, what
That
happened?
is literally kind of. I actually have the pictures at home, but there's a panel right basically above where the landing gear is. There was a panel of sheet metal that was completely removed, that was about 8 feet long and 6 feet high, like completely sheared off. Yeah. I'm glad I wasn't there for that. That was a weird instance though, that as you saw, the mountains around Mazar-i Sharif can get the snow. And this was a thunderstorm event that had developed over the mountains. It had produced enough rain that it melted a significant portion of the snowfall. So it caused a large amount of water to basically rush downhill into the base and onto the airfield. So it was design flaw because the base that I was at was like an old Russian military installation. So it wasn't, yeah, it wasn't like the greatest of. Oh, this was just, I just took this little video. God, it's on a cell phone. It's on an old cell phone. Okay, so the little UAV that we used to give them weather, they would fly all over. It was just for surveillance. So it launches on a catapult and it recovers on this long crane. It's probably about 50 feet, 75 feet tall. We'll just play that again. So what they do to catch it is they have like a GPS sensor in the crane and they fly the UAV close enough that it catches a string. So this is the UAV, because I couldn't quite, it's hard to time it because literally I'm looking through this window and then I just see like, oh, the UAV like flying in. So I tried to jump up and get it as quickly as possible. So imagine that it is just flown right in there. So. And then it just dangles there and then they pull it down. It's quite the operation. Oh, this was the old one that they had. I did catch this one.
They really can't think of a better name.
It's effective.
I love that.
Like, it's kind of golden into that.
Yeah. Looks like something you'd see on the White House.
It just.
I mean.
So these are the things I got to see from my weather observation office on the airfield.
You just look at what you're working, it's stupid stuff. like that.
Exactly. Okay, so this is I gotta double check, but. So I was standing outside the weather office and that was obviously our runway. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the AN 225 aircraft. It's the world's largest cargo aircraft. And it was one of the first aircraft destroyed in the Ukraine. Because it's in the Russian aircraft, they're Antonov aircraft. So it was a Ukrainian aircraft and that was not it. I always wanted to see it and I was very sad that I did not get to see it. However, its counterpart, I'm trying to look it up. I can't remember for sure. It's not the AN 124. It's the one that's in between, but that's what that is. It's the second largest cargo aircraft. And somewhere buried on my Facebook, I have pictures of them loading up Black Hawk helicopters into this cargo aircraft, 2 of them with the propellers off, loading them into the aircraft to fly them out, like as the drawdown was happening. Cause those things are so big, so, yeah.
Film that and post it. I really thought it would be like, not allowed.
Oh yeah, and if you wanna know how you move the water off. I had never seen this before until I was poking around in the. Like, what do you do when you're like someplace so remote? Like, just hope for the best, I guess. Exactly.
Like what it says, but it doesn't sound very, very disappointing.
Sorry if they're cussing. All right, well, I think that's about all that I have. But are there any questions? Is there anything you want me to go into more? Is there anything you want me to show you? I don't know, like. Yeah,
I'd love to, I just want to share an experience that I had.
absolutely.
Well, I'm from the Caribbean and I used to go to the local nurse office. And in 2020, a neighboring island had a volcanic eruption and like the wind blew the ash and everything so far into the, I want to say the southern part of country, southern north.
Yeah.
The island is southern north. And then like we literally couldn't have any flights, nothing coming in.
Yeah.
Like the vehicles, like we had warnings that like you cannot go outside with a mask.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It is
really
unhealthy, absolutely. That's interesting
And
though.
also like I had a little bit of experience with sending out tap reports and stuff like that. So
Cool, that's awesome. Very, very cool. Yeah, volcanic ash is not,
yeah, it was really bad. And it was like I wanna say a week and a half long, like you couldn't.
yeah.
And it wasn't even my country, it was another country.
I think it was probably, well, no, I know the biggest one was, I think 2014 Iceland. One of the volcanoes in Iceland went off, and the thing with Atlantic travel is that anytime you're flying like over a large like ocean, you have to have things called emergency time points. So basically they split the trip into like kind of equal points and then give you equal distances to certain airports along the route that are your emergency, you know, if you need to land. And one of them just happens to be like Reykjavik in Iceland. So without having the Icelandic airports, it's very difficult to make any kind of North Atlantic travel. And I think it was back in 2014. Luckily, I was overseas and it didn't impact me or my missions, but like the air travel was like stifled over the Northern Atlantic for a few weeks, I think it was. Like it was a huge deal, like big time. So yeah, that's very cool.
Do you have a way to contact you or anything? Cause I want to go in the Air Force as a weather officer. I graduated, so.
Your email with everyone?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, like, you can pick my brain, like, like I said, I have a non-traditional route, so like, I know lots of weird ways to like,
Well, you presented
kinda,
during my freshman year last
yeah,
year, and that's kind of what set me on that path, so.
oh, very cool, that's awesome. I will say, No, I shouldn't say it, no. I will say if you love meteorology, plan to do a short stint in the Air Force and then, but you're gonna get amazing experience. As an officer, I say that, because usually officers, like the first 2 to 4 years, you'll do like a lot of weather, you'll do a lot of briefings and stuff like that. And then after that, you're more in like a managerial, like manpower type role. And so that's why I'm like, if you love the weather aspect, just having worked around many weather officers, if you like the weather aspect of it, like, just keep that in the back of your head that, like, if you got like that kind of experience and then have your degree, that's killer, like, yeah. Absolutely. Any other questions?
I just wanted to say that I was a fool who thought that all of Afghanistan was just depressing, dry, hot desert.
Well, don't get me wrong, it is, but
Okay.
actually, is anybody here from Texas? Okay, I'm kind of glad and sad too.
I do speak to someone regularly from Texas.
Tell them that a lot of Afghanistan looks like West Texas. That'll piss a Texan off really quick.
Okay, I need you to guarantee my safety when I say that to them.
There's a reason I don't mess with Texas.
Exactly. I said that to somebody one time. They got really angry and they were there.
Really?
Like, they were there with me and I lived in Texas too. So like, they couldn't get upset with me, but they did. Yeah, absolutely.
What are they gonna do? Sick their low and energy grid on you?
I apparently, yeah, like, it was really sad because when that happened, my family was sitting in Fort Worth with no power and no heat, and I was sitting in my warm dorm room in the middle of Afghanistan.
America.
Exactly, go figure, so. But that's very cool, and if you have any questions about the Air Force, I still have a few friends who are in as officers and
Yeah.
like, you know, if you wanna reach out to them, see how things are, whatever on the officer, I was enlisted. I got out just before I made staff sergeant and then I got out right after, cause I got the job offer to go overseas, and so I was like, well, that's cool, cause I actually liked deploying. I didn't think I was going to when I first did, I was terrified, but I never felt more like I was doing my job than when I
loved
was there.
Traveling and serving, because like my whole family's law enforcement, my brother is actually going this summer to boot.
Nice.
But so like when you talked about it, I was like, that kind of just clicked for me, because I was like, I want to do National Weather Service, but it's like, I was like, I don't want to just right off the bat. So like that was kind of what clicked. So.
That's awesome. That'll be good
But I would love
experience.
to talk to people there, definitely.
Absolutely. I can
Yeah.
definitely, I'll even like put out like a feeler to like, you know, say anybody that, you know, be interested. And I know, like, even if I know of at least 4 of my friends who are still in, who are officers, and they're all probably like majors and above now. I a few of my enlisted, a lot of my enlisted weather friends are still in, but and a few of them have gotten out, so like, even if you want like different aspects
Yeah.
on, you know, that kind of thing, so. Yeah, absolutely, thank you, contact me anytime, I'm literally just working in my basement, like, you know, throughout the day, so. I will say that's another thing to get used to is rotating shifts, working shift work, like, I'm a young woman and I am working shift work. My normal shifts are like 1 in the afternoon till 9 at night, and then next month I'll start working 8:30 at night until 6:30 in the morning.
And my family's law enforcement, my stepbrother's doing his shift work right now, so
Yeah,
every time I go home, it's a different shift.
yep, nobody ever knows, it's a surprise. But aviation and weather, they're always like going, there's always stuff going on, so. Any other questions? Cause this is fun, like. I hope I didn't, oh, yeah,
So were you initially interested in meteorology or did you develop a love?
yeah. Okay, so this is actually something I was talking to my dad about this morning, as a matter of fact. I grew up outside of Washington DC. And back in the 80s and whatnot, like, so. Bob Ryan, the Channel 4 weather team, used to have a program where there was a weather watchers. And when I was in the 3rd grade, thought weather was super cool, even though a tree blew over on our house, and then I was terrified of wind from that point on. but I was really interested in weather. And so I contacted the TV station and asked if I could be a weather watcher. And so I was their youngest weather watcher, and so I had like a little thermometer that like would tell the high and low for the day, and then like my rain gauge, and I call it my little weather. And like, so I did that for a few years, and like that was really like kind of, you know, fun and interesting, but and I don't know why, I don't know if it was where I grew up or what, it just was never like presented to me as a career option. It just was never something I thought about. So then we'll just fast forward to I'm 25 years old, I'm working at a law office. And I hated it, and I was the youngest person in that office by like 15 years. It was, and people were just like, get out while you can, and I'm like, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, so.
I'd rather be in Afghanistan than here.
Right, well, that's kind of what happened was, I went to grab the scheduling book, cause we did like real estate closings, I went to grab the scheduling book. Walked into my office, got into an argument with a realtor, cause they said, well, they're in the military, so we need to work around their schedule. And I'm like, so I remember going back into the girl's office and flopping the schedule down and being like, you know what, I just need to join the military, then everyone will cater to me.
Yeah, right.
And she, being married to retired Air Force, looked at me and was like, you know, I think I could see you doing that. And I was like, whatever, and I like left, and that planted the seed, that little weird interaction planted the seed, and then I was like, well, if I were to do this, first of all, I was like married, I didn't have a degree in meteorology, like I was very interested in weather, and I like to think that I'm a relatively smart person, I'm just not good at math. I'm just, bless you, my dad was a math genius, like perfect score on the GRE for math, like. Me, no, I'm like a weird cross of like a social science STEM girl, like if that's like a thing. Yeah, like I feel that I am very good at doing what I do. I have gotten many compliments from other people, I'm not trying to compliment myself.
You're allowed.
I'm not. So I like to think that I'm good at what I do. I'm not good at developing the algorithms and the differential equations and but God bless the people that do, and I am the end user that loves those people so much. They are in my hearts every day. I am not a science, like math person. It's just, it doesn't click for me, but weather does. It's very strange. So I went into the recruiter, I was unmarried with a 1-year-old child who is now a freshman or sophomore year. Unmarried with a 1-year-old child, I go into the recruiter's office, he wanted nothing to do with me. Until I took my ASVAB and I was 1 point away from getting a perfect score.
Wow.
I wanted the perfect score.
And you eat.
Exactly, that right there is like the peak moment for me in my life, exactly, right there. Well, at that point in time, he was clamoring, like, you know, what do you wanna do, what do you wanna do? What job do you want, cause we need to get you in the Air Force, and I'm like. Weather, that's what I want, that's what I wanna do. And he's like, well, okay, and so at that point in time, enlisted could give like 3 job chances that they wanted. We put down other jobs that I could conveniently not qualify for. Like, even though I did actually go on to earn certifications as a structural and airport firefighter, on a side note, when I went to MEPS for the Air Force. I did that because I got turned down for a smoke meteorology job in the state of Oregon, and they said if I had more of a fire background, they would have hired me. And so I went to a fire academy and earned fire certifications and all of that, and since it's airport related, you know, anyways, so that's where that came from. Yeah, I can't remember what I was saying now, so like that was a complete and utter sidetrack, so.
That's actually one of the reasons why we developed the 2 options. One, you have to go all the way through Cal 3 to be used. The
Yeah.
other one, you stop at Cal 1.
Really?
There's a lot of jobs where you're not gonna use the high-end math,
Exactly.
right?
Like, I don't use any of that on a daily basis doing what I do. I'm not the one developing all of this, I'm not the one creating all of this, I'm glad that there are people who do that. But there's also people who just are good at being end users and providing that, and that's me, and that's why I took an, non-traditional route, so I got my weather job, I went into the Air Force. I deployed, I worked at Scott Air Force Base down in Belleville, Illinois. That's where we forecast for like the whole northeastern United States at the time. And then I got stationed out at Dyess Air Force Base. That's where I got to issue a tornado warning for the base. It's cool. I also got to issue two for Fort Campbell in Kentucky. So sorry, these are the. You have to have a little bit of a dark side being weather because you get excited over devastation and destruction, okay? Like, let's all be real with each other, like, if it's a little Cat 1 hurricane, you're kind of like, eh. If it's a Cat 5, you're watching the news, you're on the national, you're like digging into it, like, let's all be real. We're a little dark, so.
That's the exciting weather.
Exactly. I will say, I was kind of disappointed, I was looking it up, I was gonna recommend something and then they didn't have it this year. Was a way that you guys can, I don't know, like what your interaction is with the National Weather Service, but I know in the spring they do this severe storm spotter training. Perfect, was it here?
Yeah.
First of all, I had to work, but second of all, they didn't have it on the website, I thought they did, and then they took it down, cause I kept looking. So I'm gonna do the virtual.
They did
one,
one.
so I went last year. Well, I'm glad that you guys went, cause I was gonna highly
I
recommend.
didn't get to, I had to
Oh,
work.
they have a virtual one, if you Google it, it's on like, I think a Tuesday at 2, so if you're not like busy or whatever.
Last time you go like 5.
It's got a comment module that's completely virtual.
Yeah.
It's asynchronous as well.
Try going next year.
It's cool, I've been doing them since 2008 with various, I've done it with
That's right.
San Angelo National Weather Service, the St. Louis National Weather Service, another Quad City at one, and so I just kind of maintain that even though I mean, I've been an observer for years, so like I know how to do it, but I'd like to stay kind of plugged in and whatnot, so.
Where did you do your Air Force training then? when you
Keesler Air Force Base in Biloxi, Mississippi. That is where all weather training happens for the Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps. The Army does not have weather. Because in the original doctrine, when the Air Force split off from the Army back in like, I think it was 1947 or 48, I'm a bad airman because I don't remember for sure. It was stated that the Air Force would provide meteorological services to the Army. And in exchange, the Army would provide veterinarian services to the Air Force. So like the search, police dogs that they have on base and everything. The Army actually provides a veterinarian on every Air Force base for that. And so like, if you go to any Air Force base, you'll see like at least one Army person and it's the veterinarian. And then you'll go to Army bases and you'll see Air Force people and it's probably the weather people. So just a little, but Navy has their own weather and then Marines have their own weather. And so everyone goes, when I went through, I know they've restructured it a lot. When I went through a 10-month. You guys want to imagine this. Imagine waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning because at 6 o'clock in the morning, you have to line up in lines of like, 8 across and like 10 deep outside of like Thompson. And then you have to go march to like Sherman, like the whole time, like you're like, mom, I can't see, like on your way to college class. Because it was set up as a college university, like environment, like that's why the Air Force has their own like community college and everything like that. So imagine marching to school.
I had a church training camp kind of thing as well, Pathfinders, it's like armed stuff.
Yeah.
But we did that like 5 in the morning, we would have to wake up
Mhm.
and like you literally cannot sleep in, they would literally come and knock it and then you would get punished for not being on time. It was the most treacherous thing ever.
Exactly, and yeah, you can't fall asleep.
Yeah.
You can't, if you fall asleep, like you learn to stand up in the back of class. I learned how to spit sunflower seeds from the Marines in class because it just kept me like doing something. But yeah, it's just and so that was 10 months from 8 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. every day with an hour break. And then From there, we went to our first duty station, which for me was Scott Air Force Base. Then we were in on-job training for 6 months. So I was technically in the Air Force for a year and a half before I actually put out my first forecast. And then from that point on, you kind of just, you start training people when they come in and everything. And it was always weird to me because we would actually train like as like low enlisted people, we would actually train the new lieutenants who would come in because they had the degree, but like applying it to like the way that we do things and like, you know, the aviation side of it and everything, like we would actually teach them. So it was kind of a cool experience as well. And then after a few years there, it's kind of like a training environment, you're forecasting for all these places. Then you get sent into the field to an actual weather station at a base, which is when I went to Dias, and that's where I would observe, put out the hourly observations and species as needed. The TAF, we would put that out, watches, warnings, advisories, and then we would brief the pilots. They would either come into the office or we would send them, or there were a couple of times I got bombarded with like a huge briefing where I walked into a room and there's like 100 people out there and you're like, okay, here we go. Those were usually the ones that I used to think it was a big deal. I used to think a year and a half ago, I thought it was a big deal that I used to do like 1 or 2 flights from West Texas to Al-Udeid and Qatar across the whole, I thought that was a big deal. And then like, that's now just a Tuesday for me. It's like, it's kind of wild, but I say that because I'm beyond thankful. The year and a half I got stuck in Afghanistan, like was very, very challenging, we'll just say. And I moved my family from Fort Worth, Texas to this little weird town in the middle of nowhere, Illinois, that I had never been to, never heard of, nothing. And I just moved my family here, and because when I was done, I purposefully moved myself at least, other than the Macomb Airport, at least 90 minutes, an uncomfortable commute distance away from any airports, and 3 hours away from any military installations, because I did not want to do weather anymore. I was so burned out. I did not enjoy it anymore. It was the worst. And then I moved up here. I actually got a job working here at the university at first year advising. I was the office manager down there. I was the what was it, January 2023 employee, yeah, it was like just, you know, but so I worked here for just under a year, first year advising. So I don't know if any of you guys came through like there when I was working there, and like,
Yep.
Yeah,
That was awesome.
so that's awesome. Yeah, so I started peeking around. Never be afraid to put your dream search words into Indeed, because I literally put in remote meteorology, and I am now working at home doing what I have been doing like my kind of whole adult life for the most part. And now I get to do it from home, and it's wonderful. So any other questions? Cool, I didn't want to like try to like teach a lot because like, you know, I'm not, you know, but I wanted to.
I really enjoyed it.
Cool. Cool. Well, if there's ever anything that you want me to talk about, like for anything, like I'm happy to. This is fun. I work in my basement, so I don't get out very often. But yeah, I will say, like, whether if you're interested in it, it's a great field to be in. It really is. And I am proof that you can do it, like really, like, I mean, I will say I am the cautionary tale. It has taken me years and years to get to where I was, cobbling together experience where I could. You guys are gonna have like a wonderful start, like having that degree in meteorology, because I will say my horizons would be a lot broader if I did have that degree. Because you guys with a degree would get hired like that over me with, you know, 16 years of experience because of the WMO requirements and everything, so. All is good though, because I found a little home where I can do it, so. But yeah, I'm here, so if you guys ever want me to come talk or whatever, I'm happy to, and you know,
I'll
just,
probably have you come talk to the Sonoma class next year.
Awesome, that would be a blast, like, I love doing it, like, I just, I don't know, it's the fun part of it, because there are some nights. My job is fun, it's really cool, I get to sit in my basement and forecast the weather all over the world, and that's really cool. There are some nights that I cry in my basement because it is stressful, so. It's nice to have like the times when I can like be like, weather is fun, like, it's pretty cool.
And roll more people into it, so you can share the suffering.
Exactly, exactly. I was gonna say, like, if you ever down the road, keep my name in that, you can work remotely as an aviation meteorologist. Looking that way. But yeah, like, if anybody wants to, get in touch with me for any like questions or,
Absolutely.
you know,
I will
whatever.
definitely reach out and
Thank
see
you.
if I can also leave my other address out.
Perfect. Absolutely. And then if anybody wants to, like a copy of this